Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us. This is a recorded version of the Tuesday night, April 4th, Hear the Watchmen Zoom Fellowship with Josh Tolley.
Glad to be here with you, Mike. How you been, man?
Yeah, we've already been here, guys. Mike forgot to hit the record button.
But if you
That's
don't know
funny.
Josh, he is known for his amazing book called Evangelpreneur, which helps people serve the Lord in their career and not serve the man, not sacrifice any of their values as they support their family. And he's been a blessing to our ministry since 2017. I think that's the first year you were at our conference in Dallas. And oh, Josh, we love you so much. We saw the journey with your assistant to fiance to wife to baby mama. I mean, every conference, it was a new beginning with Josh Tolley and Brittany. And we are so blessed that you're here with us tonight. We're so blessed that you're here on our fellowship, and y'all get to, actually ask Josh all your questions after we keep going here. But thank you, Josh. We love you. We appreciate you more than you ever will know. And I'll never forget when you and your wife did the couples. Remember we did that couples?
Yes.
That was like a thing that God was really pressing on my heart. Like we need to help couples understand what it takes to stay together in these rough times, because Christian couples were falling apart because one person was awake and the other one was woke. And there was all this conflict in marriage in our, in the remnant, and you guys nailed it. And I will tell you, from this day forward, I still get phone calls and emails saying all of you, and they mention all of you, including Dave Daubenmeier and his wife, including Ellie Marzulli and I think it was Ellie Marzulli. I can't remember it was definitely Derek and Sharon, but all these couples shared with the group what held their marriage together and what made it solid as a rock. And there were people, we opened the conference with that session. And there were people who came up to me in droves. I'm talking like 12, 13, 14, 15 people who came up to me after your session and said, do you know, I could leave right now, and every penny I paid for this trip and this conference was worth it. I got more out of that 1 hour. And that was totally a God thing, because it was all spontaneous. You guys didn't have any script. We had a few little bullet points and it was all God. Remember that?
Yeah, I do. I talk about that all the time. And some of the key sort of takeaways from that are applicable today, even though a lot of the awake versus woke has kind of settled out inside the church, at least at the moment. Those other challenges with those other key points that were being made still apply. And, I was talking even like a week ago to a group, and we were talking about how do you keep a marriage together and a relationship tight when you have all these other stresses in life? Well, it goes back to the same exact things. You have to be building something together, whether it's a business or a ministry or something. You can't have a marriage and that is basically two separate lives. You can't have his career, his friends, his hobbies, her career, her friends, her hobbies, and expect that to last. That is designed to fail. And then everybody gets upset when it does. Well, when God created marriage, he said, let them be a help meet. Let them build something together. And it's really interesting. We hear all the time, you just run towards Jesus, and then somebody else will run towards Jesus. And when you meet, that's the person you should marry. But then what happens is they keep going their separate ways. And pretty soon this person becomes your ex. Whereas opposed, works better on a whiteboard, but you get the point. But as opposed to run towards Jesus, you meet each other and then you build a life together. And pretty soon she becomes your why. And when I talk to couples now, they're like, oh, I could never build a business with my spouse, or I could never get involved in ministry with my spouse. You did not think that the day you got married. The day you got married, you thought, I cannot breathe without her. But what happened was you became so separate that now somebody has to break in order for that to be re-grafted in. But it's just a parallel to faith, right? I mean, you have to break. Somebody has to break to go then be grafted in again. And that believers don't want to do it either. So that same sort of humble pie that we have to kind of take a knee and say, okay, God, graft me in, even though it might hurt, is the same humble pie we have to take to our marriage and say, okay, graft me in, even though it might hurt.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you know, Jeannie and I did Hear the Watchmen together, and it's been wonderful and at times very difficult, you know. But we moved forward, and we continue to move forward. You know, it's go ahead.
But even those difficulties, when you face difficulties and you have two separate lives, those difficulties divide you even further. When you have difficulties and you're doing something together, they become things that actually bind you to each other. It's kind of like anybody who served in the military or police or, you know, any sort of crisis, EMT, firefighter, doesn't matter. Any sort of crisis, the people you went through that with, you are bonded with forever. Well, that same thing is true with your spouse if you're actually building a life together. Because instead of sitting down on the couch and saying, how was your day? You were in the day together. You saw her be strong. She saw you be weak, vice versa, and you helped each other through it. So now when more adversity comes, you're stronger than you were before. It actually prepares you for more diversity. This is really big. Diversity in marriage prepares you, if you're submitted correctly, to face larger diversity. Diversity, if you're separated in different lives, actually weakens you for further diversity. The diversity that comes gets harder and harder to overcome. Whereas in marriage, if you're building life together, the adversity that comes gets easier and easier and easier, which is why you see couples that have been married for 50 years, nothing disrupts their boat anymore. It doesn't matter. Some 20-year-old could come and be like, he touched my butt. And his wife knows him so well, they've been together so long that nothing's going to rock that boat. Whereas you have something today where if somebody voted the wrong way or watches the wrong TV show or, you know, whatever, they're going to, we got to get divorced. Like, it's just insane.
Well, and that is one of the fundamental problems we have in America is this like, oh, it's not going my way, I'm just going to give up. Forget this, you know. We all succumb at times to that. I've had it, and I'm not talking about in marriage, but in business and in ministry, I've had it. I don't want to do this anymore, you know, and that's when we lean on, at least for me, that's when I lean on God, and I really lean on him, you know, to show me the direction to go. And I think that's a lot of what you teach on is a direction, have a direction and a goal. And I think in your book, you deal with that quite well.
Well, thank you. And I think, you know, when crisis happens, it's easy to have a plan. I mean, Mike Tyson said it best when they asked him, you know, we talked to Buster Douglas and Buster Douglas says he has a plan. And Mike Tyson said, yeah, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And the same is true now. Everybody had a plan when Trump was in office. 3 years ago, everybody's like, yeah, we're great. We got a plan. Now you actually need a plan and everybody's losing their minds. And it's kind of indicative of why it's important to understand who you are. You understand how things actually work, because then you start seeing options for survival. Not that things get easier, but it's options for survival. And it's funny that now we're in that place. And just a case in point, I get calls all the time now. Josh, my 401k this. Josh, my pension plan that. Is now the time to become an entrepreneur? Yeah, because the last place you want to be in a financial calamity is employed. Like it's going to suck across the board. Got it. But if you're employed, you have zero options. If let's say, I don't know, let's say I fix cars, right? And America collapses and China invades. Does this mean I can still have a prosperous family, a good life, and put food on the table? Yes. Why? Because the Chinese people who come in are going to need their car fixed. And as weird as that sounds, I'm not rooting for that, obviously, but as weird as that sounds, there's an element of that. Chanel, the fashion brand Chanel, started during Nazi occupation of Paris because Nazi soldiers wanted French fashion to send back to their wives. And obviously I didn't want that either, but I'm just saying, when you prepare correctly, nothing stops this, because God's plan has been entrepreneurship since the garden. He's got this. So my advice to people is, you're going to have more opportunities now. Don't panic. And until he splits the sky open and says, now is the time to come home, you have to keep fighting anyway. You don't get to say, okay, I'm prepared to fight, and then somebody shoots a bullet over your head and you're like, oh, well, I quit. No, not this is what you prepared for. This is what Coach Dave has been yelling about since 2017 when I met him. He wasn't yelling to make you feel good in the good times. He was yelling to make you stand strong in the bad times. And I think for a lot of Christians, we have viewed church as an emotional hospital, not as a training ground. Oh, I go here because they understand my giftings, or they play the music I like, or whatever sort of emotional me, I, when in reality, it should have been a training ground for what is happening and what's going to continue to happen.
Well, Josh, what do you say to people who, because I get this, all the time. I mean, I just announced that we'll be in Dallas in April of 2024. I know people will say, well, we don't know if we're going to be here in 2024. We don't know if the Chinese will be running the country in 2024. We don't know. Same thing goes in your case when it's like you're trying to teach people how to become an entrepreneur, and they say, yeah, well, I can't start a business. How can I start a business? What do you say to people like that?
Your objection is irrelevant. Like, and I get it. Like, if you're joining us tonight and you haven't seen me speak, I do not have a soft side. I'm as blunt as a hammer to the face. But it's absolutely true. It's so what? Cry me a river. You're going to have to do something. You're going to have to do something. So you might as well do the something that has a shot at working. Like, at least slant the odds in your favor. If you look throughout history, the employment is not a safe solution. Employment does not pay your bills, otherwise you wouldn't have them. Employment does not put a roof over your head, otherwise you wouldn't lose it as soon as you lost your job. It's an illusion. So you might as well start something entrepreneurial. And that doesn't mean you have to do it. That's the other sort of mental kind of fixation people have. I ride motorcycles, and there's this phenomenon called object fixation, where a new motorcyclist, as hard as you try to avoid, say, a stick in the road, if you see that stick, they're going to hit it. Even though they're trying to avoid it, it's just this phenomenon where they're going to hit the stupid stick. And you have to train your brain to act differently. Well, the same is true now. There's so many people focused on, is China going to invade? Is BRIC going to take over the dollar? Is America going to collapse? Is everybody going to be, a girl by tomorrow? All this sort of stuff. And largely, it's irrelevant. Are we still going to have to trade something for something else? If the answer is yes, then there's your opportunity. And here's an extreme example, but it's absolutely true. First, are there entrepreneurs in China that are wealthy and successful? Yes. Matter of fact, to prove that point, that's how they got them out of poverty. Mao was driving them into poverty. They opened the floodgates to free enterprise. China prospered. Xi Jinping recently tried to restrict that, even going after the Alibaba guy. They realized, wait a second, we're slitting our own throat. And a week ago, China announced a new policy to reopen back up to entrepreneurship. So it just works. So let's go even further. If you've known anybody who's ever been to prison, there is somebody in a prison who is in an 8x8 steel box under 24-hour armed guard who can get you a girly magazine, drugs, a cell phone. If somebody can be an entrepreneur in prison, don't tell me you can't be. There were entrepreneurs in Moses's time in Egypt. There were entrepreneurs out in the wilderness. If you read that story, did he say money's not important, so leave it all behind? No, he said, take yours and theirs, loot this place, and let's get going. And for 40 years while they were out there, there's a paragraph that all the pastors skip over because it's not that important. And it talks about how for 40 years, they were trading entrepreneurship, that's business. They were trading with everybody else, which is why those dudes who came and stole the Ark of the Covenant, when they took it back to their king was like, get that thing out of here, take it back. Because they knew these people from all that trade that was happening. Nothing stops entrepreneurship. I'll give you one more point, then I'll let you talk. Sorry. But if you remember back to shock and awe during George Bush, right, when everybody was told there was weapons of mass destruction and we blew the bejeebies out of Baghdad, if you remember back to that, we all watched it, and we all watched it from home. Papa John's had more pizza orders than ever. It's kind of sick that we thought that was fun to watch, but I admit it, I watched it too. So we watched them bomb the bejeebies out of these poor people. But the thing that really stuck out was when the sun was coming up, Anderson Cooper or whoever was on the balcony of the hotel talking to Wolf Blitzer back at headquarters, and the sun was coming up. You started to hear birds chirping. The world literally just ended for them. Their world blew up, and there was people in cars and walking along the sidewalk. And Anderson Cooper said this amazingly weird sentence. Well, Wolf, the sun's coming up and people are going to work. They just blew their town up, and business didn't stop the very next morning. Do not let this distract you to the point where you're paralyzed. Could it fail? Sure. But if you do nothing, you are guaranteed to fail. You have to plan as if the rapture is 1,000,000 years from now. That's what you should plan for. And then if he brings it tomorrow morning, you're pleasantly surprised. But I have met people, Mike, and I'm dead serious about this. I have met people who says, Josh, we don't have a dime because we really thought the world was going to end 4 years ago. That is literally the opposite of what the Bible told you to do, Bible believer. So where was your faith? We are so interested in some sort of easy button, whether that's for our marriage or our salvation or our rapture or our income, or we just want the easy button. The easy button's not coming. You have to fight until the bell rings. And as a martial artist, that's absolutely true. If I'm in a boxing match, do I hit him once and just wait? Nope. If he's looking like he's going down, do I stop punching? Nope. I literally keep punching until that bell rings. Well, in this case, God is the bell. He's going to blow the trumpet and say the round is over. But until that moment, keep punching.
Well, Josh, I can't agree with you more. As many of the people on this call have heard my testimony know, a long, long time ago, or 20 years ago, I spent a year in county jail. Trust me, you were not allowed any money. You were not allowed any tobacco. You were not allowed anything. But there was a whole economy in there, which I was part of. I worked in the kitchen. I'd get food. I'd trade the food so I didn't have to do a chore. It's an entire economy in there. There's good economy stuff like that. I didn't want to do a chore. Someone wanted food. So, hey, we got a good trade. There's bad economy too. Same goes for day-to-day life. Now, I know that people, when they listen to you and they hear you speak, is like, well, of course Josh Tolley can do it. I mean, he's very outgoing. He's well-spoken. He was probably born that way. Is that the way it worked for you?
No, sir. No, sir. I grew up poor. I was homeless for a while. When I graduated high school, I read at a 7-year-old level. I was so shy, I couldn't order a hamburger from McDonald's until I was 19 years old. My first 3 businesses failed. So no, not at all. No, everybody on this call has more going for them than I did. I don't care if you're 92 years old and doing it.
Amen. I get it. Trust me, I get it. You know, and the thing is, I want to key in on you failed 3 times. Now, I can tell you over the course of my life, I've failed many times and I was successful many times, but failure is actually a part of success. You know, if you don't try, you're not in the game, you know, so you have to try, you have to get in the game. I mean, the game's going on. Either you're a spectator or you're a participant, you know. Personally, I'd rather be a participant, wouldn't you say?
Well, absolutely, because if you're a spectator, you don't even have a shot. If you're a spectator, you are the person who Jesus says, many will come to me saying, Lord, Lord, and I will say, depart from me, I never knew you. That verse should send a chill down people's backs, because that's not a Buddhist, it's not a Wiccan, it's not a. They said, Lord, Lord. They were the every hand, you know, all eyes closed, bow your heads, any hand. Yeah, I see that hand back there. Yes, ma'am. That was that guy. He said, Lord, Lord. And he said, I will depart from me. I never knew you, you worker of lawlessness. You cannot just be a fan of Jesus. You cannot be just a fan of Jesus. That's not going to cut it. You have to participate. And that's true with anything. That's true with your children. That's true with your spouse. That's true with the economy. That's true with your faith. You have to participate. But going back to failure breeds success in entrepreneurship. It is the opposite in employment. If my first job was cashier at McDonald's and I got fired, the odds of my second job being better or worse than the first, which do you think? Worst. Now, because I got fired and failed at McDonald's, I might be on fries at Burger King. And if I fail at that, I might be mopping floors at Wendy's. Well, the opposite is true in entrepreneurship. If I make a business that sells pens and it fails, and I start a next business that sells knives, what are the odds of my next business being successful? Higher or lower? Higher. And then if that one fails and I sell whatever this thing is the odds higher or lower? Higher still. Failure in business breeds further success. The guy who wrote the foreword for Evangelpreneur failed, I think, like 15 or 17 businesses, way more than I did. But he finally got a hold of it where he makes a couple million a month, and now he volunteers as a pastor. So the failure is what led him there. You have to be willing to embrace the failure. And what's really crazy about this is, as adults, we think that quitting is okay when we fail once or twice. You wouldn't let a 5-year-old act like that. I have a 1.5-year-old who's learning how to run. She falls down. She probably falls down over 100 times a day. No joke. Like, if we actually monitored it, probably 100 times a day. Do I say to her, well, sweetie, you failed, so obviously this isn't for you. Just give up. But for some reason, we turn 18, go out into the real world, and failure is the worst thing possible. No, I know people. If anybody on this watches Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank's been on my show. And Kevin doesn't like investing in people unless you failed in business already. Because when hard times come, and they will, if you haven't failed before, you are not prepared to be successful. Same thing is true here.
Well, you know, it's so true. I've told this story before, but, you know, when I was in my late 20s, I was right before I turned 30. I was very successful in commercial real estate. And I had failed to pay my quarterly taxes, which was a big mistake. And so I owed this big tax liability, and I called my dad, who was retired and very successful, and told him my tale of woe. And what he said to me was, wow, you let me know how that turns out. Now, what I wanted him to tell me was, well, how much is it? I'll loan you the money or I'll send you a check. No,
Sure.
wow, you let me know how that turns out. Well, what that taught me, I never didn't pay my quarterly taxes again. I mean, and we go through those failures and we learn from them. It's the same thing as Christians. I mean, you look at Josh and I, and you think, man, here are these two guys that they seem to have a handle on things, which is the biggest myth in the world. God's got a handle on
Amen.
it. I don't.
Yep.
But, we were both homeless at one time. I was in jail, and fortunately, God lifted us up. But I still, to this day, take lessons from that and apply it to what I do today. And that's the important thing. Nobody can't do anything. Lots of
Correct.
people won't do anything. Do you find that in the people you work with?
That is so true. And it's interesting, because you hear these people like Bernie Sanders or Richard Wolff or any of these people who push for like socialism and incoming, basic living income and stuff. And they're like, well, because not everybody can make it, which is absolutely true. But they say it as if that's the majority. Half of the people I interact with don't want to. They just don't. So that's half the pie, too lazy to even breathe. That's why God had to make it a subconscious thing. Otherwise, they'd be too lazy to do it and they'd all just die and that wouldn't have worked. So half of them too lazy to even breathe. 10% of them are successful already. And I mean that. There are 14 million, actually, it's higher than that. There are 17 million millionaires in this country. 17 million millionaires. Well, there's only 152 million households, which means over 10% of this country is a millionaire. So you take 50% that don't want to put in any effort. They just want that proverbial easy button. Then you take the 10% who are already successful. Well, that leaves 40 that's in between. Okay, let's take 10% that just can't. There's, they're mentally challenged. They're like something is preventing them. Well, so for the vast majority, 50, 60, 70, 80% of people, it is literally a choice. It is a choice. And while what I'm about to say is not theologically sound, so don't send me a hate email. I know it's not theologically sound, but a very successful person taught me 26 years ago, Josh, hell is when you die meeting the person you could have been. And ever since I heard that, I'm like, dude, just throw me in the lake now. Put me in the lake of fire now. Because how terrible would it be to meet the you could have been? And I mean it when I tell people, you wouldn't let a 5-year-old act the way most adults allow themselves to act. You really wouldn't. Oh, I don't want to. Oh, it's going to be hard. Oh, the odds are against me. Yeah, that's called life. The odds were against you being born. The odds were against you being born in America. The odds were against you being born in a time where you weren't a serf or a slave. The odds were against you. If you haven't picked up on this yet, God is really good at helping you with the odds. And what irritates me the most is when it's from supposed believers. Like, I totally get it. If you're some sort of atheist and you're like, oh man, I evolved from proverbial soup or primordial soup and life is nothing. But you're telling me you believe in a book that he says, I knew you since I knitted you together in your mother's womb. I know every hair in your beard. I know, like plans I have for you. He's a light unto your path. And you're telling me that he can't do it? That's really what you're telling me. When people come up to me and say, Josh, I can't do it, what you're really saying is, Josh, I don't believe God can do it. Well, if that's the approach you're going to take on earth, are you even sure you have a ticket to what's coming next? And I never, ever, ever talk about it takes an amount. You've known me for, I guess, almost 7 years now. I've never said you need to make $1 million. You need to get a Porsche, dude. That's not it at all, ever. It's about what are you doing with your time? And if you don't have faith to walk forward on earth with things that he's already given you, I really do question the things that you can't see. And I bet most of those people know all the songs to the worship, or all the words to the worship songs. They sit in the bleachers at church, and that's what I call them, the bleachers. And they root for the pastor. They root for Team Jesus to win. They know all the stats, but they're not in the game. They're like the fan at the football team. You're not in the game. You think you're a part of the team, but you're not.
Yeah, I so subscribe to your train of thought there. You know, I find, and this is a generalization, so don't send me a bunch of emails saying you're wrong or why did you say that? But I find that Christians are filled with fear and doubt, fear being future events appearing real. And they say they're believers, I trust in Jesus and all that, but gosh, I can't even think about going to a conference in 2024 because I don't know if I'll be here or not. Where's the faith?
Right.
Where's the faith when you go out and you say, well, what am I going to do? You know, what I have found, and I think you have found the same thing, as a matter of fact, I know you have, is that when you are doing what God wants you to do, you don't think about the money. You don't worry about, like, is it going to work or not going to work? Of course, everything you do isn't going to work. You know,
Right.
That's just humanly impossible, you know. And so, you know, I will put a marketing piece together for one of our past conferences that's available on demand, and I'll think, boy, this will really grab people. They'll order this and they'll get the message that was in this conference. And nothing, zip, not one order, you know.
I know.
It's not their fault. I have to look at, okay, what did I do wrong? You know, and now am I going to say, oh, well, because that didn't work, well, let's just shut everything down. It's over with. No, you can't, you know, look at, you know, Babe Ruth statistics, man. The guy struck out. So did Willie Mays, struck out way more times than they got a hit, but they always got up to bat.
They always got up to bat. So I love Evangelpreneur. I think God is all over that book. But it's not the only book I've written. I have books 6 and 7 coming out this year. And one of the books that I'm coming out after that is actually called Jesus Don't Take the Wheel. Because you have all these believers that are like, oh, Jesus, take the wheel. Jesus, just take the wheel. I give it over to you, Lord. But in reality, they do that when they wanted that husband and they didn't get him. They wanted that job and they didn't get it. They wanted that car and they didn't get it. They are like, Jesus, get me the life that I want. Every time from Genesis to Revelation that God calls somebody to do something, they don't want to do it. And this is really, really key because there's so many people like, well, I'm waiting on the Lord to tell me a mission. God's going to give me something to do. Yeah, and it's going to be something you don't like. David didn't want to do it. Jonah didn't want to do it. Moses didn't want to do it. Jesus himself prayed to God, Father, if this cup can pass from me, but if it can't, your will be done. Nobody wants to do what God is calling them to do. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. You're going to get beaten, dragged down, ripped apart, but you do it anyway. And when people are like, oh, I don't know if I can go to Dallas. It's hot. Sweetheart, you better pack some asbestos because it's going to get hotter for you. Because this whole idea that it's supposed to be easy, show me that. Show me that. Paul was beheaded. Peter was crucified upside down. I don't know if Christians realize this, but they voluntarily join the faith where you go to die. And it's just like And it's not me being mean. Jesus said that. Whoever wants to protect his life is going to lose it. Whoever's willing to give it up, right? So, but the same is true with a knife fight. I've been in way too many knife fights, but you know it's going to hurt. There's no good. Like, no knife fight has ever ended well for either side. You know it's going to hurt, but you go anyway because you're defending somebody or whatever the reason is, but you do it anyway. And I think what happens is we've grown up in an America that is so stinking comfortable. Like, I saw this idiot on TV, and he was talking about how, well, you don't understand. Millennials have lived through 2 recessions, a war on terror, and their life is. Go back to the greatest generation. 1 in 3 of their neighbors never made it home, hence the star in the window. It wasn't a recession for them, it was a depression. We have it so easy that our recessions are like, oh man, am I going to have to cancel Roku, or can I still really? And we're the ones that are saying it's too hard? I mean, the devil has got some people fooled, man.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, half of these kids can't decide whether they're male or female, and so we'll go down that road on Thursday night. But, my dad was part of that generation. He was a World War II,
Sure.
He fought in the Pacific. And, when I was little, he was really tough. But when I was little, if I went up to him and he'd say, what's wrong? Well, Dad, I had a bad day. He'd say, do you want to know what a bad day is? And I was like, no, I'm having a good day now, because he knew what a bad day was. But, he did what men did. He got home, he went to work. He didn't focus on what happened over there. I didn't know a lot of it until nearly when he was dying, or when he died. But, he just did it. And, he worked for the same company for, 40 years and progressed way up the ladder. But, I'm sure there were days he didn't want to go to work. I'm sure
Right.
he had those days, but they just did it. And that's the thing that gets me today, Josh, is the younger generation. They don't want to just do it. I live in a little town in the mountains that was decimated by COVID. A lot of businesses closed down and a lot of people were unemployed. Well, they all started getting the stimulus check. Well, then when COVID ended, all the businesses started hiring, but they wouldn't go to work because they were like, well, I can only make $10 an hour. And, I don't know, why should I go to work? Because I can get this money and I get like an EBT card for groceries and all that stuff. There's socialism at its best. If you want something, especially if you're a believer in Christ, you pray about it and then you get into action. It drives me crazy. And I think you can relate to this. When someone sends me an email and says, Mike, will you please pray for me? We have a loan application in to get a new house or a new car. And can you pray that it gets approved? Jesus doesn't approve loans. Now, Jesus may direct you to go to a particular house or a particular neighborhood or something like that, and you do your due diligence and your footwork to get it.
Right.
But Jesus doesn't approve loans. Jesus doesn't get you a business. You have to do it,
Yeah, it's funny, I remember these stories have kind of quieted down, but like 4 years ago, right before COVID, there was ISIS, and ISIS was beheading all those Christians. Remember that? Like literally lining them up and just killing them. And you would go to a typical Christian church service in America, and they were talking about how gas prices are terrible. And, there was a mugging once in the neighborhood a few months ago, and Betsy's clutching her pearls going, well, Jesus is going to rapture us out of here soon because it's this bad. Tell that to the mom who watched her son lose his head, yet still did not repent for believing in Jesus. Like, we are so weak But this is what I will also say, because I don't want it to be just negative. Sure, Nike's phrase "just do it" has to change now to, just sit at home and let somebody else do it so you can enjoy watching Maury Povich while you eat bonbons. But I get that. But for those who are willing to move, there's a ton of opportunity for you. And everybody loves quoting, the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. And we think it's just going to fall like manna out of heaven. It's not. Otherwise, it wouldn't be laid up by the wicked. I swear people don't get that part. But it's the wicked have it, right? Well, how do you think that transfer is going to happen? They're just going to give it to you? I mean, they didn't give it to Moses. Moses had to bring a bunch of plagues. Well, God brought the plagues, but you get the point. And then, it was bad. Well, the same thing is happening now. Yes, most people are lazy. Yes, most people want an easy button. Yes, most people want to sit at home and get their stimmy. But for those who have a little bit of ambition, you can conquer it all. There has never been a time, because everybody's now so lazy, there's never been a time where a little bit of effort produces 700% return. Because you don't have to outperform a generation like your father. It's hard to outwork our grandfathers. Well, now you don't have to outwork the grandfathers. Man, I remember my grandpa in his 80s had old man strength. Remember old man strength? You're like, it might take him 4 minutes to get out of the chair, but if he shook your hand, it was a vice, right? Just old strong dudes. Well, if I had to compete against that, you're right, I might get my butt kicked. But now I have to compete against Pauline, who's half dude, who's wearing a little douche knot, drinking strawberry cream mocha lattes, and doesn't want to show up on Tuesday. So if I put in this much effort, I beat Pauline.
Yeah, well, we talk about the easy button. Look, for me, the easy button has never worked, because if it's easy, I don't seem to have any interest in it, So, have you ever known anybody that the easy button works for?
No. The devil delivers the easy button. He has since day one, or well, I guess 6, whatever. But since Eve, right? He's always delivered an easy button. Oh, eat this little fruit. You can be as smart as God. Oh, Jesus, bow a knee now and I'll give you all of this world. It's always the offer of the easy button. That's kind of the point. If it appears easy, then it's probably not of God. Everything God has called all of his prophets to do, all of his messengers to do, all of his normal people like us, because I'm not a prophet, but just anytime God calls you to do something, it's never easy. Read the testimonies of these people who were missionaries, where I remember I met this one dude, I forgot his name, I feel bad now, but his dad was killed and eaten by cannibals. He was a missionary. The cannibals ate him. And when I saw him speak, he was on stage with one of the cannibals that ate his dad. And he now became a believer too. And they toured the country preaching Jesus and the power of forgiveness. What? Holy cow. But, hopefully they have the right mocha latte at church service on Sunday. And I hope it doesn't go past 11:45 because the Astros are playing the Cardinals.
Yeah.
It's just stupidity on a stick.
But that is fundamentally the problem is, with the church today, is because it's about the lattes in the lobby and where are we going to breakfast afterwards? And it's all couched within the fellowship type thing, which fellowship's very important. But, I completely shy away from the church, the brick and mortar church. I have my reasons, but, I just do. And, it's like the whole thing with Easter. Okay. I don't observe Easter. I think Easter's a commercialized holiday and all that stuff. But if you're a Christian and you want to observe Easter, go for it. Maybe it's an opportunity for me to talk to you, but I'm certainly not going to bash you for it. And any Christian that bashes another Christian for something with their belief system, in my opinion, is just, they need to be sent away. I'm not going to say what I really think, but they need to be sent away because, you know, if you're going to bash Easter, then that means that what you're doing, if you have ever seen the joy in a child when they get one of those stupid little plastic eggs filled with some jelly beans or some quarters or something like that, it's just a party. It's got nothing to do with the Bible, you know. But why, as Christians, Josh, do we tend to have to pull people down constantly? We pull them down, and we try and strangle the life out of them to believe exactly the way we believe. This weekend is Resurrection Sunday. I mean, it's like a big deal to those of us that are truly into the Bible. But if you want to go chase bunny rabbits and plastic eggs and candy with your kids, go ahead and go for it. We can talk later, but I'm not going to cut you off at the knees.
Well, I would say a lot of it comes down to something you said at the beginning of that, which is real fellowship, right? Because we know that Peter and Paul disagreed on some stuff to the point where they had to kind of, bring in a quorum and become referees. So we know that they weren't always seeing eye to eye, but they were always moving forward. What I don't like is this idea that somehow you're saying that you believe, but you're not moving.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like I don't know, like the water boy on a football team, just to kind of grab an analogy quick, right? There's a fellowship that the players will have that even if they love the water boy and they lift him up on their shoulders, that they cannot share with him because he wasn't getting his head beaten in out on the field with them. Well, that same thing is true when it comes to Christianity. And I think what we're seeing, we see about 1 million people leave Christianity a year now, 1 million. But the people who stay are the ones who are moving forward, the ones who are studying. And that's why you're seeing this move away from Easter and then to Resurrection Sunday and then to Passover. And because the people who are left are doing the studying and they're refining themselves, which is fine because God says, study so you should be approved. Come, let us reason together, and all you're getting, get understanding. So there's okay, that's cool. But the real gut check to the believer is, are you doing anything? And that doesn't mean you have to be the missionary who goes and gets eaten by a cannibal, but are you helping that homeless dude? Or are you just like, oh, there's a homeless dude? Are you setting up a war room if you're a stay-at-home grandma and you can't get out of your house? But are you at least setting up a war room to pray and to fast and do what you can do? That's the point. Are you doing it? And we're too long in the game. We're too long in the tooth, so to speak, to be playing patty cake with this thing. We just are. And as odd as it sounds, and don't take this the wrong way, but this is happening in all faith. If you go on YouTube and you look up, Jewish discussions, they're having a discussion like this because there's a lot of LGBTQIAXPA 2+P Jewish people. And then you have the observant, and I get it, right? So just give me some grace, but you have the observant sort of Jewish people who are like, what is going on inside of our faith? That's not, so the conversation's the same. Same thing is happening in Islam where they're like, man, we're having this division. And what that really signifies to me is that there are people who have faith, and then there are people who wanted that emotional hospital. And the emotional hospital time, the 50,000 people in the arena and everybody's speaking in tongues and we're knocking people over with our coat, that's kind of gone. Now it's who's the real serious players It's time to get serious. It's time to do whatever we're supposed to do. And if you're not on the field, shh, be quiet.
Amen. Amen. Well, Josh, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Now let's tell people, how do they find your book? How do they find you? What's going on?
I got a lot of stuff going on, man. I guess the book you can find anywhere books are sold. I know that sounds like a commercial, but I guess anywhere books are sold. I'm not huge into self-promotion, so wherever you want to buy it, go ahead and buy it. The stuff that we teach people to do, they can follow us on Facebook. Just find Josh Tolley. I do this thing for acquisitional wealth, which I was filming that before I did this, where we teach people how to buy businesses. That's kind of fun. I will say real quickly, if people are concerned about their 401k, this is what people don't realize. If you have a 401k, it's being killed right now. Dave Ramsey was wrong about the whole hold on to it for 30 years and it's going to work. No, it ain't. You can convert your 401k without tax penalties and without early withdrawal penalties to purchase an actual company that's producing revenue. And for a lot of people, that means whatever your 401k balance is can become your new yearly income. So that's a game changer for a ton of people. But we do a lot of stuff. I talk about preparedness from a survival standpoint versus a prepper standpoint. And I don't know, just find out where we're at next and come along. I got a couple new books out. Dude, I wrote this book, Why They Don't Believe. You can actually find it on Amazon. People ask me about it all the time. It's out there, but it wasn't published. And the reason it wasn't published was because the Christian publisher thought it was too biblical.
No.
I'm not kidding. I saved the email. So, we do stuff like that too. And I don't know, just become involved. I got nothing really to promote or plug. So just find us, I guess.
Is there a website people can go to?
Yeah. You can go to joshtolley.com, JOSHTOLLEY.com. You can go to Acquisitional Wealth has its own free Facebook group. And just type in Acquisitional Wealth and there's a free page or group or whatever they call it there. But I do a lot of stuff in Texas now. So if you're in Texas, I'm always speaking somewhere.
Well, we'll be.
I got a new show coming out, actually. This is kind of like breaking news. The Josh Tolley show I did for 11 years, and we ended our contract with our syndicator. And I took a little bit of a break, and I'm about to come out with a new show called The Logical Place, where we just examine each topic from a very logical standpoint, and we get rid of all the emotional crybabies and objections, and we're left with a logical conclusion. So that's coming out.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have you back on here, and you're in Texas, so we'll have to talk about what you're doing next April.
Dude, if it really is going to be the last one, I would love to do it just for that. I would love to.
Well, Josh, I'm getting old, man. You're right. I've been beat up, persecuted, gossiped about, and I keep going.
But that's how you want to go into the grave, right? You don't want this like slow down, let's just take it easy like Sunday morning sort of thing. You want to get into that grave, skid marks still smoking, bullet holes in the jacket. You get to heaven and Paul high fives you and he's like, dude, that was awesome. That's what you want.
All but the still smoking part.
Okay, yeah. Still smoking. Yeah, don't do that.
He meant because my hair was on fire. All right, you guys.
That's awesome.
I'm going to stop the recording. Don't go away, Josh.